Hey, what's up, Raider Nation? Obviously, there's been so much talk about Maxx Crosby. He actually spoke up for the first time on his experience. And in that third segment, we're going to have a little bit of fun with a mock draft for rounds 2 and 3.
That has been the big question, Raider Nation. What is happening? We all know what's happening in round one. What is happening after that? Do they go with protection? Do they go playmaker? Do they think about defense? All those conversations and more coming up on the Squad Show. Let's get it.
Raider Nation, it's time. This is the Raiders Squad. Everything Las Vegas Raiders every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Death Star in the desert. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Commitment to excellence starts here. The Raiders Squad Show starts now.
Hey, what's up, Raider Nation? Remember, if you're watching this on YouTube and you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media channels. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, that's on the screen. But if you're listening to this on the audio side, you can find us there as well, Apple Podcasts, wherever you stream any of your shows. You'll see in the description below the ways that you can connect with us. And remember, this is an interactive show. So in that final segment, Q and I will be taking some of your questions and comments, but also keep in mind, if you're not able to leave some right now as we do this live, you can always hit us up at another time. And I just want to say, starting off, thank you so much for rocking with the Squad Show. We do appreciate it. The channel has grown as well. And for that, we got to give a quick shout out to Ari, because he's helped this channel grow so much. And if you're watching this on YouTube, he deserves a lot of the credit. So quick shout out to Ari as well. And most importantly, we appreciate your continued support. And if you are listening on the audio side, give us a 5-star, because that helps the channel and show grow as well. Like I mentioned, in that fourth and final segment, we take your questions and comments. So if you have any, please drop them into the chat. In that third segment, we're going to be talking a little bit about the NFL draft, a mock draft that Q and I may give you some names for the second and third round. And we are going to get into the Maxx Crosby experience in Baltimore. I got a little clip of him talking on his Rush podcast, but obviously we have to talk about the latest news first. And Q, there were a couple of signings that happened the other day, and we'll start off with that. The Raiders bringing in a little bit more depth to the O-line. No surprise there, signing guard Spencer Buford. And obviously he's 6'4", 300-pound O-lineman, and he joins the Raiders after spending the first 4 seasons of his career with the Niners. Originally a 4th-round selection by the Niners in the 2022 draft. He played for UTSA, which is a great football program, and they also re-signed defensive tackle Thomas Booker IV. And of course, last season with Las Vegas, Booker played in 17 games. He started 13 of them. He had 44 tackles, 7 quarterback hits, and 1 forced fumble, and also 1 fumble recovery. So Thomas Booker obviously was, I feel like, a bright spot for the Raiders last year. Let's start off with him. Q, what were your thoughts on the Raiders wanting to bring him back?
I was excited for Book. He's a really good guy. He's a really good player. I thought that he started to show what he could do. When he was in Philadelphia, he was really in a logjam at the defensive lineman position, right? I mean, they have so many good dudes on that defensive line. It was really hard for him to get onto the field. So when the Raiders made the trade, sending Jacorian Bennett to Philly, JB was my guy. So I was like, oh man, I hated to see that, but I knew that the history behind JB was he just couldn't stay healthy. So I reached out to a couple of my guys, because I didn't know who Thomas Booker was. I didn't know what he brought to the table. And before I had a chance to really ask anything about him, I had my guy Mike Gill hit me and was like, you're going to love Book. Book is a dude that, one, he plays his tail off. He just needs more reps. He's always active though, so whenever he's on the field, you're gonna enjoy it. And if he can get on the field more in Vegas than he does here in Philadelphia, he's gonna show something. And I think he did, right? I mean, you rattled off the stats that he had in 2025. I thought he did a good job. Robbie Leonard was the defensive line coach. Robbie Leonard knows how to work with these guys on the D line, and so for him to make an emphasis to make sure to bring Thomas Booker back as a restricted free agent, I thought that was a big deal. And I think he's going to have an even more expanded role. So I'm excited to see how he continues to mature. But I was happy to see Thomas Booker come back, because like I said, I thought he was a bright spot for the Raiders in 2025.
Yeah, and this is a defense that looks totally different from last season already. And he was definitely one of the bright spots, as I mentioned. And in Philly, he was behind a bunch of guys that are super talented. And I think he got to show what he could kind of do for the Raiders last season. And now I think he's going to look even better in a Robbie Leonard system that is also changing. But at the same time, Q, I think it's less pressure on a guy like Thomas Booker that has to fit into this 3-4 base, because they brought in so many quick linebackers at this point. And the draft hasn't happened either. So when you take a look at the defense at that point, it's kind of exciting to see what they're building, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I'm excited, like I said, for Robbie Leonard. I love the fact that Amber shared the story about how, they had that conversation at the facility, and there was a lot of things that he's looking forward to doing with this defense. And it, wasn't like a lot of people thought that, oh, Robbie Leonard just got the job to try to keep Maxx Crosby around. That was not the case at all. Right. He was a guy that was very well deserving of the position of the defensive coordinator. So knowing that he has his own plans, his own ideas, he comes from the Mike McDonald tree. He comes from the Brian Flores tree, obviously the Patrick Graham tree as well. He has all those different influences. And now we're going to be able to see him put that to work. I think that that's a good thing. I've always respected Robbie Leonard a lot. Saw him at the facility the other day when the free agents were introduced and just kind of gave him a quick congratulations. And you could tell that he's excited and pumped up for the opportunity that he has in front of him to put this defense together. And obviously getting Maxx Crosby back is going to help as well. But they've got a lot of, I think, really good players up front. Obviously, they need more. I think that they need to have much more depth, but I think that they have some really good talent that they're going to be working with. And like I said, I think Thomas Booker is a big part of that. Like I said, Jacorian Bennett was my guy. I hated to see him go, but he literally did nothing in Philadelphia. I mean, people hit me all the time. It's like, man, Q, your guy did nothing for us last year. And I was like, well, he couldn't stay healthy. Again, that's just kind of what it is. And so that's the story of the day for JB. So I think that the Raiders, I mean, if you want to say won that trade, I think they got the better end of that trade. Let's put it like that. Because, I mean, he wasn't like some – 5-6 sack guy and, wrecking shop. He wasn't some absolute stud at that defensive tackle position, but I thought what Booker was able to provide was good.
Yeah, and you talked about Jacorian Bennett. I mean, he just couldn't stay healthy even with the Raiders. So at that point, you just got to cut ties. And I think Thomas Booker was definitely in the trade. The Raiders won that. Now, speaking of depth, because you mentioned the Raiders need more depth on defense, they also need depth at the O-line position. So they make a move. They sign guard Spencer Buford. Q, I don't know too much about him. I do know that, he does have the experience, and I feel like this is a depth move for the Raiders. And that to me is a little bit exciting because now they're really focusing on the O-line. I remember this time last year, I was like, are they going to start making some moves for the O-line? And they weren't. And so now they bring in some depth. What are your thoughts on bringing a guy like Spencer that has that experience and is also familiar with Clint Kubiak because of his ties to San Francisco?
That's the biggest key right there. You hit it on the head. I was because I was not familiar with them either. Again, I'd be lying to you if I act like I did. So, talking to Brian Peacock from Locked On 49ers, that's exactly what he said. He off the top, he's like, man, one, the familiarity with Clint Kubiak is going to go a long way. He's a guy that could be, a starter if need be. He's a guy that may be able to push some guys in camp, just to kind of, iron sharpens iron type situation. So that's something to look forward to. But him knowing the scheme, him knowing what, Clint Kubiak is going to be looking for, that's going to help him as well. It's one of those situations. I'm with you 100%. Last year at this time, the staff was telling us that the guys were fine. The offensive line was fine. They just, they were going to get more out of them than the last staff. And I think we all sat back and was like, huh? Like we saw that offensive line and there was plenty that was like, no, they were really good the last 4 games. I was like, yeah, I wasn't really buying that. Right. I remember them telling us that the scouting combine, we really like our offensive line. I was like, I don't know. So at least this year, you're right. I mean, they're addressing the offensive line. They're letting it be known that they need some people from outside of the building to come into the building and make it better. Obviously, the signing of Tyler Lindenbaum. But, yeah, Spencer Buford, definitely, a depth piece. He's a guy that could play multiple roles. And, another athletic offensive lineman to fit in with this, outside zone blocking scheme that they're going to be running. And so that's the key. They're going to have to get in there and they're going to have to get as many reps as possible and just, learn the position and learn the scheme so they can, they can have a chance to execute their offense. So Ashton Jeanty can have some lanes to run. So whoever the quarterback is going to have an opportunity to get the ball to Bowers and Big Mike and Trey Tucker and everyone else involved. So it's all going to start up front. We say it all the time. Professor Kennedy, who's still enjoying his vacation, he says it all the time, right? The offensive line. You've got to address it. And that's what they're doing.
Yeah, and by the way, everyone's been asking. Raider Nation's been wondering where Big Link is. Yeah. He'll be back. He's just handling some business, taking a nice vacation. He'll be back and refreshed, and so he's going to be back and refreshed and talking about that O-line. Obviously, now, we talked about the depth. We talk about how much experience he has, but also the ties with someone like Clint Kubiak. It's interesting because so many people are talking about this Raiders offense now. And I think it was FanDuel, who, by the way, is a sponsor in front of the show. They put out like this picture and it was like of the Raiders offense, but the O-line had Thayer Mumford in it, and I was like, that's interesting. I believe they put out one that also had Meredith on it as well. And I was like, if the Raiders have like Meredith on their line, their starting O-line on day one, I think that's going to be an issue. Like, and that's just personally me, no disrespect,
sure.
but
No,
I
for
feel
sure.
like he's more of a depth guy. So if you have him as a depth guy, I think that's good, but I think they still have to make changes to that O line. Now, we didn't really get to see Charles Grant too much last year. We didn't
Right.
get to see him at all. Like, let's
Oh,
be serious here, right?
another thing about Charles Grant, and it's I'm glad you mentioned his name. Brian Peacock said this as well, and just because he says it doesn't mean that it's the end all be all or whatever. But we were talking about the offensive line, and he said, "Well, the Raiders stole my guy last year," and I was, "Wait, what?" And he was saying that he had Charles Grant mocked in the 3rd round to the 49ers, and he was thinking that they were going to draft him before the Raiders did, and then the Raiders, obviously got him before they got number 98 and number 99. They went with Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant back to back. But he was telling me that he really likes Charles Grant. He thinks that Charles Grant could be a player. And the thing about it is, I bring it up because I've heard that from multiple people, that a lot of people inside the building, even though we only got to see him for a handful of snaps, like a quarter and a half at the most for the season, the people that see him in the building every day, the people who see him in practice every day, the people who see him in the weight room and the film room and just around the facility every day, they're really high on him. So I don't know. Again, I'm fully transparent. I don't know what he's going to bring to the table, what role he plays, but apparently there's a lot of excitement and juice behind him. But obviously we haven't seen him on the field, so we couldn't just give a real assessment. But that's a name to watch out for and pay attention to for sure.
Okay, that makes me a little bit more excited. I know there was a lot of hype on him. No, I'm just being honest, because we didn't really get to see him, and I'm still wondering what he looks like on the field. And both you and Link have said before, like, we're not really going to know unless they hit the field. And so that was the issue last year. So we know what Caleb Rogers can do, and I'm excited about him because he's still really young. But Q, do you think you go into the draft and you still select a tackle? Do you think you go in there with that mindset if there's a good tackle available?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think you ever stop addressing the offensive line or defensive line, right? I mean, you got to build it through the trenches. The thing that the Raiders have shown is that they've never had the depth that they need, right? I mean, that's been the biggest problem, right? I think that they have good ones, but when a one goes down, when a Colton Miller goes down, then all of a sudden Stone Forsythe is your guy the rest of the year. And that was, less than ideal. And then you have a guy, as you mentioned, Jordan Meredith. He's probably really good at depth, but he probably shouldn't be a starter. If JPJ goes down, and unfortunately JPJ has gone down multiple times in his career so far, right? Who's behind him? So, yeah, I mean, I think you need to have as much depth as possible. At some point, you're going to have to replace Colton Miller. I mean, he's not going to be there forever. I'm not trying to run him away anytime soon, but I mean, the reality is he's been in the league for quite a while, and he's starting to get banged up and nicked up as well. So at some point, what are you going to do at that left tackle position? So the job that John Spytek has is, yeah, he's trying to build this team for this year, but he's also trying to build the team for the future. Right. And so it's like I said, as much frustration as it was because we didn't see Caleb Rogers till the end of the year. We didn't see Charles Grant but only for a quick minute. They also have to understand what they have in that building and say, OK, this guy might not help us. Like basically Charles Grant took a redshirt year. He might not be able to help us this year, but he's going to be a guy that we lean on heavily next year. What's DJ Glaze do? To be honest with you, I think DJ Glaze is a guard. I don't think he's the right tackle. Where's that competition? Because Charles Grant compete for that right tackle position. Could they kick Glaze inside? I give Glaze a ton of credit for just doing whatever he's been asked to do. The one thing I know when I met him at the rookie mini camp when the Raiders had that, when he was a rookie, obviously not last year, but the year before. And he said, I can play any position you want me to play. If they want me to play right tackle, I'll play right tackle. If they want me to play guard, I'll play guard. He only got thrown into that right tackle spot because Thayer Mumford went down. Remember, I mean, in training camp, he went down like the first day, and they said, well, we don't, again, not having depth. Glaze, you're in. And okay. And he went in there. And so he's been that guy at the right tackle spot. But I don't think that it's etched in stone that he's going to be the right tackle in 2026. So, where does he fit in the role? Obviously, JPJ fits there somewhere, right? Where does Caleb Rogers fit in, right? So you're starting to see more bodies. And I'd rather have throw the question at like, well, where's this guy going to go? Well, where's this guy going to go? Well, I'd rather ask that than have to be like, well, because there is nobody, you have to go in. Or because there is nobody, you have to go in. So I think that they're in a good position right now, but I don't think they ever stop addressing the offensive line.
Yeah, I think there's only like 3 positions that are solidified on that O-line. And that's Tyler Linderbaum, that's Colton Miller, and then obviously I think they're going to use JPJ as a guard. I would just think that they would use JPJ as a guard because you got Tyler there, right?
But you don't know which guard spot. Like literally, I'm looking at 2 spots. I'm looking at Colton Miller as the left tackle and Tyler Linderbaum as the center. And then JPJ is a guard for sure. But what are you putting him at right? Are you putting him at left? It's literally 2 spots on the line I think are solidified. And everything else is kind of wide open like some old school TV antennas.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. I just think for JPJ, now we know that he really isn't going to be that
Yeah,
center. And for
right.
me, that's okay.
Mhm.
And so when I think about the depth on the O line, and it's funny, last year you guys were like the Raiders better hope that nobody gets injured, and then everyone got injured, and then it was like this big
Right.
mess. But nonetheless, I love the fact that they're adding depth to the O line, and we'll see what they do in the draft. And speaking of the draft, and just changes that are being made, the NFL might make some rule changes. There's an owners meeting at the end of the month. And
Yeah.
so I just want to mention these rule changes and kind of get your take on it.
Yeah.
Two teams that did propose rule changes. One was the Steelers. And the Steelers proposed the rule change. It would permit NFL teams to directly contact up to 5 prospective unrestricted free agents during the league's legal tampering window. Teams attempting to enter negotiations with the pending free agent during that 2-day period would be allowed to make one video or one phone call per player, during which they could also make travel arrangements. Q, this doesn't really address the issue and what happened to the Raiders, though, because the legal tampering period, right? Like nothing is like ink to paper or anything like that. What are your thoughts on the Steelers trying to propose this rule change?
I mean, I don't mind the video chat or the phone calls. Look, I don't like the tampering period. Right. I mean, we're doing all these different, just open up free agency. Like, just, you know what I mean? Like, why are we making it so difficult? Right. If we're going to meet at the corner store, let's just find the quickest way to the corner store. Instead of, you don't have to stop at A, B, and C to get to the corner store. Just go to the corner. You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing? So that, to me, I'm not going to get up in arms about it, but the legal tampering period is silly sounding, first of all. If it's legal, it's not tampering. If it's tampering, it's not legal. Right. And to me, that's funny. It's only been a rule since 2012, by the way. It's not like it's been around forever. And the only reason it's even a rule is because deals started to get announced before the new league year opened up. And they're like, well, that's not okay. We better have a legal tampering period. So at least when these deals start to get announced, we can say, well, they're not official yet. So that was kind of is what it is. So I don't mind. I mean, if they want to allow the phone calls and the video, whatever. I mean, like the deals are done in Indy anyway.
just open up free agency earlier, and then we won't have those issues, and we won't have the Maxx Crosby debacle, which we're going to get into in that second segment. But
the thing is, we probably would have still had that situation, right? I mean, because at some point to make a trade, you have to have a guy come in for a physical, and so they probably would have just found a way to wiggle out of it anyway, even before they come to a deal with Trey Hendrickson. I mean, bottom line with the Max situation. They knew that they lost a lot of players. They knew that they lost a couple first-round picks, and they knew Trey Hendrickson was out there and available. And they said, he's not Max, but he's not bad, so let's go ahead and get him. Bottom line, I'll always believe that. I don't care what they say. I don't care what nobody else says. That's my belief and my truth.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that, but let's save it for the next segment, Q. Okay, because we're gonna get into all of it. One more rule change. I know, I know, pure radio guy, right? So there was one more rule change. The Browns proposed this. This is the one where I'm like, I don't really like this one at all.
Right.
So under the current NFL rules, teams are allowed to trade picks in a draft that will take place within the next 3 seasons. The Browns are proposing to expand the maximum range to 5 years out. And when I think about this, I think about one of the worst trades ever made in the NBA when the T-Wolves traded for 4 first-rounders for Rudy Gobert, and they thought they'd pair him up with Cat. And I still think it was like the worst trade ever. It never worked, but it was 4 years out. The Browns are saying, let's go for 5. Like, that's crazy to me. What are your thoughts on the rule change that they want?
I hate it. For every reason you just said. It sounds very NBA-like. First of all, it is very NBA-like. They're allowed to do that. And I talked about this on the podcast today, but can you imagine if that rule was in place when Antonio Pierce was the head coach? I promise you what would have happened. 5 first-round picks would have gone to the Washington Commanders for Jaden Daniels. Not that Jaden Daniels is not a hell of a quarterback, and not that I wasn't pounding the table for the Raiders to find a way to go get him. That would have been what they would have done. I promise you, he would have done everything in his power to push Tom Telesco to go give up all 5 first-round picks in order to go and get Jaden Daniels, because that's his guy going all the way back to college, actually going all the way back to L.A., right? I mean, he's known him forever. That was his dude. He was in the locker room after the Week 18 victory over the Denver Broncos, like well before the draft ever happened. Jaden Daniels was in the locker room supporting his guy, Antonio Pierce. So, yeah, just imagine AP and Tom Telesco say, all right, we're all in on this quarterback. He's going to make the difference. And maybe he would make a big difference to the point where AP still has a job. But what if he didn't? What if he was just okay and AP never got better as a head coach? And then they said, yeah, we're going to fire you. And we're going to fire Tom Telesco. And then you're trying to hire a new head coach and you're trying to hire a new GM and you don't have first-round picks for the next, 4 years? What head coach and what GM is going to sign up for that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I couldn't imagine that. Could you imagine trying to hire Clint Kubiak with no first round pick and no first round picks for the next 4 or 5 years? He wouldn't be here. Be like, oh no, I'm good. No thanks. Right? That's going to be my first head coaching job, and I don't even have a first round pick for the next 4 or 5 years. Nah, save that for the NBA, man. Let the NBA shelf life and the way that they conduct their business is way different, and the draft is different in the NBA. You know what I mean? Like the draft in the NBA, a second round pick is like, man, you barely made the cut, right? In the NFL, a second round pick, you could be a star, right?
Yeah.
But in the NBA, you know, there's draft picks that there's guys that get picked in the lottery in the draft that in the NBA that go straight to the G League, and you never hear from them again. Remember Sebastian Napier? Remember that guy? Remember, he was really good at UConn for a quick minute. He was the guy that was supposed to save the day, and LeBron was going to stay in Miami with the Heat because he really enjoyed what he saw from Napier. Where's Sebastian Napier now? He was like a top 10 pick. Where is he now?
Crazy. That's wild to me. Yeah.
Draft picks in the NBA and draft picks in the NFL are like night and day. So don't try to take the NBA approach in the NFL. It's a bad idea.
Yeah, and I think if that was the case, I think GMs would give way too much. Like they'd be overpaying for, a second rounder or like something like that. So for me, I don't think it's a good idea. I'm still not even over the Carson Palmer trade. Because I was I hated that. I remember waiting in that draft, like, why did the Raiders give away a first rounder for Carson Palmer? And then it was like one of the worst seasons ever. So I'm not over that. But something that I think Maxx Crosby will get over, because I think he's gonna ball out this upcoming season, is his Baltimore experience. We're gonna play some audio from his podcast and his experience, and he talked about kind of what he went through that day he was in Baltimore. So keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're watching or listening to the Raiders Squad Show. And a quick word from our sponsors. College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night, from early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts. There's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay that you want. And right now, obviously, with the tournament, if you're on the West Coast, it starts in about 45 minutes. You can build a parlay for that first round. And obviously, the bigger you make the parlay, the bigger your profit. But I'd say maybe stick to like 3 picks for a parlay just to be safe. Go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. All right, welcome back, Raider Nation. Remember, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. In that final segment, Q and I will be taking some of your questions and comments. So please drop them in the chat if you're watching this on YouTube. And once again, thanks so much for rocking out with us, for supporting the show. The show continues to grow. And whether you make Locked On Raiders your first listen of the day and then the Squad Show your second listen of the day, we do appreciate you. So obviously, there's been so much talk about Maxx Crosby. I'm going to play some audio from his podcast, The Rush. And he talked about his Baltimore experience. It's not going to be too long. I just took a little clip, but there's like a half hour of him talking about it. So I suggest you go and actually listen to it. It's a great podcast that Max does. But let's take a quick listen to his Baltimore experience.
Everyone's got their own theory, conspiracy theory. No one really will ever admit at either side what the real truth is or whatever. And ultimately, it doesn't even matter. I am where I'm supposed to be. I know that. I'll just say that. And this is the only thing. Like, I went there, did my thing, had my MRIs. Like, I didn't, like, I was asking Joe, like, yo, like, could I, like, before I left, I wanted to see the head coach and just chop it up, talk football, talk ball. Like, he's a defensive guy, never met him before like that, so I wanted to chop it up. So I didn't get to meet with him till the end of the day. I didn't get to see the GM at all. I thought I was going to see him when I first got there. I didn't see him for 5 hours.
So he didn't come out the whole time you're testing or doing your physical. Everyone's talking about the GM never came once out to see you.
And I don't know why. I'm not going to speculate. I didn't see him one time. I even asked the girl. I was like, where's Eric at? Like, I want to say, like, you know what I mean? Like, he just made the trade. Like, I didn't see him for 5 hours. So I go and do my thing. At the end, they're like, yeah, I'll take you up. Joe was like, I'll take you up and you go see the head coach, whatever, just before you leave. I was like, hell yeah. I was like, that's what I want to say what's up to him. So I went back up and I dap him up, and you could just tell, like, the energy was a little bit off. And the GM was standing in, like, the hall, like, in the room next to me to the right. And that was the first time I seen him. And, you know, I'm just in my head, like, this is a whirlwind. Like, I'm so excited, like, fired up. You know what I mean? Like, this is a new opportunity, whatever. And you could just tell the energy was off. Like, I dapped him up. He had, like, a blank face. And I'm like, okay. I'm not thinking anything of it. Maybe he's just different. I don't know. I don't know him, whatever. Yeah. I go into the room. They sit me down on the couch. And he's like, man, I don't know how to say this, but, you know, one of our doctors has concerns with, you know, with the results and whatever. And, like, with your knee, like, some of them have, you know, are concerned about the future and da-da-da-da-da. And, you know, we really want you and this is what it is, but, you know, we're just going to have to get more and more opinions. And I was like, the first thought in my head, like, I was terrified.
So that's a lot just to take in out of that 2-minute clip. But what I got out of that 2-minute clip, Q, I think the Ravens knew when Maxx was flying to Baltimore, which, by the way, terrible travel experience. They did not do that. They did not do that, you know, in a major way. I'd say that. But I think they knew that they were going to step away from Maxx because at that point they knew Trey Hendrickson's value went down. Mm-hmm. So when he talked about the vibe was weird, I think the Ravens knew when before Maxx got there, that they were going to call off this trade. What are your thoughts on what you heard?
Yeah, I mean, just listening to Maxx and just the weird way that it was all kind of portrayed, and obviously this is his side of the story, but you know, for them not to really have even a meeting crew there to meet him at the, you know, the airport and, you know, just basically have a driver there. It was just, the whole thing seemed off. So I'm with you, right? Everything that we're hearing leads to us all believing that they were ready to call that thing off well before they got him into the building. For the GM and the head coach not to meet him till way later in the day, that is a red flag. I mean, that's just not how a business is conducted in the NFL. When you make a big move, a splash move, you have the meet and greet party out, right? I mean, I've been around the Raiders facility plenty of times when the new guy shows up, and man, they've got everyone, you know, coming down the stairs there at the building, and they're in there shaking hands, and MD's there, and you know, a lot of people are excited about, you know, who's walking through the door. And to hear that it was basically nothing, and you know, he doesn't meet the head coach or the GM till like 5 hours later, that you know, that all feels off. So you know, it was an experience. It was something that, you know, Maxx maybe needed to get out and see and realize that, hey man, the Raiders haven't been a winning organization the whole time he's been there. He's only been to the playoffs one time, but you know, they at least they treat their players right. At least they take, you know, good care of them, and you know, they show the appreciation. So, you know, I'm sure he's got a little bit of different perspective now, but yeah, it seems like Baltimore pretty early on had no plans of going through with this trade.
Yeah, and just in terms of the flight, like what they did is there's not a lot of direct flights from Vegas to Baltimore. Baltimore doesn't have an extremely big airport. It's not a hub or anything like that. So what they did is they flied him over to DC. I'm guessing he got there during like rush hour or something like that. But then it took him like 2 hours to get to DC from Baltimore. And it doesn't really normally take that long. But all in that's a terrible experience, right? Already. Mm-hmm. And then I think what's really upsetting is, you know, in that clip, as it goes longer, and I suggest everyone to go listen to it, Maxx talks about how he got scared because he didn't know if something was actually wrong with his knee. And that's the part that kind of makes me upset because Maxx worked so hard to become the superstar that he is. And then Baltimore goes and like takes his value away that he worked so hard for. And there's kind of, I feel like they kind of ran a smear campaign against him because nobody wants to touch him now. And I think that's so upsetting for a guy that has worked so hard. And I think if an organization can do something like that to a player, I think it says a lot about the organization.
Right. Well, I agree. And on top of that, I mean, yeah, it's a bad look for Maxx, but like you said, it looks like a guy that's now damaged goods. It's also a bad look for the Raiders, right? And I hate that probably more than anything because now it looks like the Raiders try to get over on Baltimore. I think a lot of people are smarter than that. I think that they understand, especially hearing Maxx's side of the story, that you know, I mean, I saw Baltimore Ravens fans on social media like, man, I know the Ravens are my team, but damn, they did them dirty. You know what I mean? Like there's folks that are even siding with the Raiders that are on the Baltimore side, but in the big picture, it's almost like the Raiders tried to sell the Ravens damaged goods. You know what I mean? And that's not cool. And so, you know, that part of it is what I don't like, in the fact that they can do that. And it's their word against the Raiders' words. And so a lot of people are going to look and say, well, you know, it's the Raiders. So, yeah, I can imagine that they probably did something like that. But, you know, what I have heard from talking just to a few like NFL insiders is that the majority of the league believe it was a Baltimore thing. So that's good. I think that's a positive because I'd hate for John Spytek to try, for them to give him a bad name, like, oh, Spytek tried to pull one over on Baltimore. So it's one of those situations. It is what it is at this stage of the game. Maxx is back. I think he realizes what it means to be at an organization that really values him as well. That's the other thing, right? The Raiders, they roll out the red carpet for Maxx Crosby. Baltimore was like, that's just another dude. You know what I mean? It's like, sometimes it's a little bit different. I had this experience when I was young in radio. I was working in Fresno and I got the chance to go to San Francisco and I was like, yeah, I'm going to go. It's a bigger market. Let's go. And I got there and it's like, yeah, whatever. You're just another number. And my old boss was like, hey, man, sometimes it's okay to be a big fish in a small pond as opposed to being, a little guppy in the ocean. And I was like, I didn't even know what that meant until I got there. And I was like, okay, wait, hey, Fresno, what's up? Can I come back? So it's, what I mean? Sometimes you have to get out and see what's out there to realize that I'm actually in a better place back here. So I think that it all ends up working out. And Maxx is back where he needs to be. And I'm with you. I think he's going to have a hell of a season.
Yeah, and I just want to mention really quickly, like, I love the way the Raiders treat their former players, like alumni. Link has told me, like, nobody, that nobody does it like the Raiders, and I think they need some credit for that. Mark Davis needs some credit for that because they do it right and they treat their players with respect. And that's another thing. I think the way that Maxx was treated, they were like on the call, like on the phone with Trey Hendrickson while he was in the building with his family. Like, that's grimy behavior. And some people were saying that it's just business, but sometimes you have to have morals when you do business too. Like, you just can't treat people like dirt. Otherwise, it's like, I'm not trying to do business with you. You know what I mean? If I was the Raiders, and I'm very petty sometimes, Q, I would never do business with the Raiders again. Like, this is now a pure rivalry, not even with just the teams, the organization. Like, the fans are not going to like each other. And Maxx talked about how when he goes to Baltimore, or he's played Baltimore, he always balls out. Yep. So I can't wait until the Raiders play the Ravens. But I'll say this. Do you think Maxx, we know he's motivated and we know what he can do when he has a chip on his shoulder, because that's how he came into the league, with a chip on his shoulder. Yeah. Do you think that with the players that the Raiders have brought in, the defense looks like it's looking a lot better? Do you think there's a chance that Maxx will actually want to stay and not get traded again, Q, like, just based on what's happened and the guys that they brought in? Like, do you think there's a chance that he'll want to stay with the Raiders?
I do. I think that he's going to want to stay now that he's had this experience. I think he's going to want to stay with the Raiders. The thing about it is it going to be, week 6, 7, whatever week it is, right ahead of the trade deadline, and the Raiders have 2 or 3 wins, and some team calls the Raiders? I mean, the Raiders have traded him once, so they show that he's not untouchable. Right? They've shown that he is not untouchable, that if a team wants him and they give up what they're asking for him, then they're willing to move him. So Maxx might want to stay with the Raiders and might not want to go anywhere. But what if they're not doing well to start the season and they get to the trade deadline and say, I don't know, Dallas calls or Detroit calls or insert team that's not the Baltimore Ravens calls and says, hey, we'll give you, look what Sauce Gardner got. Look what the Jets got for Sauce Gardner going to the Colts. And he didn't really even do anything for him. It's like he did basically nothing, but they got 2 1s for him right before the trade deadline. So I could still see a scenario where Maxx ends up traded, not necessarily because now he wants out, but that the Raiders have shown their willingness to trade him, and teams have seen that.
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to get 2 first rounders, but if Maxx is playing really well,
could get 2 first rounders. And I live in the world of DBs win games, and anyone who's listened to me knows I was a big Sauce Gardner fan with him coming out of Cincinnati. I really was, and I still think he's a hell of a DB. I didn't think that he was going to get 2 1s. I really didn't. It blew my mind that Indianapolis gave up 2 1s. Like, they looked at him as he's going to put us over the top. He's going to put us into the Super Bowl. Because you don't make a trade like that at the trade deadline if you don't think that dude you're trading for is going to put you over the top. Look what the Jets got for Quentin Williams from the Dallas Cowboys, right? So I could see – I didn't think the Raiders would get 2 1s for Maxx, to be honest. I was like, 2 1s is a little rich. I just didn't think that. Now, obviously they didn't, but, they agreed to it, right? They agreed to the deal. So as much as I'm with you, I don't think that a team's going to give up 2 1s. We just saw a team give up 2 1s.
Teams get desperate, right?
Yep.
Teams get desperate, especially when they're trying to chase a Super Bowl. So we'll see what happens. But all in all, I'm kind of happy that Maxx is back. And you never know how he's going to play this season. Like, I think he's going to ball out this season because he's got a lot to prove. So I know you placed a little bet the other day, Q.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you have to. The odds are too good right now for Maxx.
Yeah.
So, in terms of Maxx Crosby being a Raider again, I think he's back where he belongs, and we'll see how this kind of pans out. But we can say goodbye to the Baltimore experience, and I think it's a terrible look on the Ravens, and they're going to have some trust issues, I think, moving forward. But hopefully, I think they should change that legal tampering period, like you said.
Yeah,
they should just have free agency start. I don't know, like maybe when the combine is happening. Like, let's be serious.
I mean, that's when everything happens. I mean, from the guy who's there, I could tell you, right? All the conversations at the bar late night, all the, all the conversations at St. Elmo's, all the conversations walking through the hotels. It's not about Johnny's soccer game. It's not how's your family doing. It's, hey, how can we get this deal done? All those deals are generated in Indianapolis. And so I'm not saying they have to start free agency right then, but when you plan on opening up the legal tampering period that Monday, just open up free agency. Just let it rip. Why not?
Yeah, and hopefully they change that rule, and we don't see those other rule changes like the 5 years in terms of trading picks. But nonetheless, coming up on the other side, we're talking about picks. We're going to do a little bit of a mock draft for round 2 and 3. We'll see what Q thinks in terms of what positions the Raiders should draft in round 2 or round 3. That's coming up on the other side. Keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're watching or listening to the Raider Squad Show. And a quick word from our sponsors. Robinhood prediction. It sounds like there's prediction markets that you got to look forward to. So what if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when the momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now it can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator, play by play. You decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the US. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Welcome back, Raider Nation. Remember, if you like the content, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. On the other side of this, in that final segment, Q and I are going to be taking some of your questions and comments. So if you got any questions or comments, please drop them in the chat. If you're listening to this on the audio side, remember, you can always hit us up at another time, and we may be able to get some of your questions and comments on another show, which we have done before. And by the way, if you drop a question, if you drop a comment, we do appreciate it. We do see all the questions and comments. We may not be able to get to all of them, but we do appreciate you being interactive with this show. And by the way, thanks so much for supporting the show as well. So Q, I think we all know that the Raiders are going to go with Fernando Mendoza, number 1 overall. But the big question is, where are they going to go in round 2 and round 3? Because let's be serious, you can find a superstar in round 3 as well. So the Raiders have the number 36 overall pick in round 2, and that'll be the 4th pick in round 2. And then they also have the number 67th overall pick in round 3, which will be the 3rd pick in that 3rd round. Now, when it comes to that number 36 overall pick, there's so many different ways that they could go. When the Raiders did have that Baltimore pick, people were like, yo, they got to go with the wide receiver. They got to go offense. Now the Raiders don't have that. Right. They have the number 36 overall pick in that 2nd round. So if you're the Raiders, if you're John Spytek, okay, if you're the GM, Q, where are you going with that pick?
That's so funny. It's been the conversation I've had the last couple of days. I've been coining it protection or playmakers, right? Or defense, right? I mean, because there's so many different options. When the Raiders had 14, I was all in on protection, right? I was all in on Venga Ioane from Penn State. Like, build me a bully up front. And I still don't have a problem with that. I have no problem with that approach. But now that you don't have 14 and you have to wait till 36, one, you have to wait till the board plays out, right? That's obviously going to play a factor in this. But you don't really have that luxury pick anymore. So do you now, start to address maybe a playmaker, right? And I've had a lot of different conversations back and forth why a playmaker makes sense. I was just on a conference call with Mel Kiper from ESPN, and he said, look, I think the Raiders have playmakers, right? I think they have a lot of different weapons and still guys like Jack Besh and Dante Thornton Jr. that you don't know what they bring to the table. But with Bowers and Michael Mayer and Ashton Genty, you could look and say, maybe the more important position here is another interior offensive lineman, right? And so it's really tough. I think there's a good argument to be had, and there's an argument for defense as well. They're going to the 3-4. Do you switch things over? Do you go get a nose tackle like, say, Lee Hunter out of Texas Tech, just an example? Do you go and get a guy like that at 36? he also gave me a long laundry list of defensive tackles / nose tackles that, could be had a little bit later on as well. Even guys that could be first round talents that drop to the second round that maybe you go and attack. So it's really hard to tell because we don't know how the board is going to, play out. Obviously, there's just a bunch of options. I've had a lot of people argue and tell me that you've got to get a playmaker. Just continue to build around Fernando Mendoza. Give him every opportunity to succeed. So it's really hard to, really kind of pinpoint and put my finger on exactly what direction I think that they need to go. So, I mean, I'm so stuck. Like it's so, I mean, seriously, it's like, it's hard. And I think it would be easier, Shantelle, to be honest with you, if I knew who Jack Bech or Dante Thornton was, or at least had an idea, but I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea. Like, could you tell me what those guys are going to be in the league, or what impression you got from them their rookie year?
My impression was I didn't see them enough. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I did not see them enough. I can't even say how good Jack Bech is. And that's upsetting to me because I know how hard he worked. Like, I loved his character coming into the league. And so we don't really know what these guys are, like Thornton Jr. I feel like he had moments to really make a big splash, but like the moment was too big for him.
Yeah, week one.
Like that. Yeah.
Week one, he made his big splash when he made his sliding catch, right? It basically sealed the deal in the game. But that at week one, we still thought Geno was good. And we know how that happened.
Oh God, don't remind me of week 2. This is when I started looking at the board, Q. And so when I started looking at the board and I was like, okay, this is where the Raiders might fall. And I know a lot of people are like, they need to go for a wide receiver. We need that wide receiver number 1. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, like, I don't think they're going to, like, Jordan Tyson's going to slip. I don't think Lemon's going to slip. I don't think Cardell Tate's going to slip. So at that point, it's like, let's stick to defense for me. Like, I think they need to build the trenches. Like, you build the trenches. So I know Lee Hunter was on a lot of people's draft boards, and a lot of people like him. But here's a question that I have for you. Zion Young, the edge from Missouri, if he is still on the board, and I know he's an edge, but you and Amber have both talked about you draft the best player available. He's explosive. And obviously, they brought in another edge in free agency, but this is a guy that should go before 36. And he's got that explosiveness. He's tough. He tackles really hard. I love everything about him. If Zion Young is on the board and Lee Hunter is there as well, where do you go? Because if you're thinking about positional needs, right? Because he's a natural edge. So I don't know, because you brought in K as well. Right. So it's like, where do you move around guys at that point?
If you're sticking with the defensive side of the things, because the defensive tackle and the nose tackle position is a little bit deeper in the draft, you might want to go and get that edge at that state, because the edge class is not very deep. So if he were to be there and in your range there at 36 and you feel like you can get him right there, you might want to go just edge. It might make more sense. It might give you more positional value, right? That's where the whole value word comes in. Do you reach for a guy? Like, I've been going back and forth on social media. It's like, oh, it's hard to justify a nose tackle in round 2. It's like, all right, well, I mean, you don't necessarily have to do that, but there's just options. So, I mean, the positional value is obviously going to be high for the edge. And then, look, the reality is, as much as nobody wants to admit it, I mean, look, Maxx was out the door once. He was out the door once and he's 29. So I'm not saying not trying to replace him, not trying to push him out, just like I wouldn't try to do that with Colton Miller. But at some point, you need to have depth behind him. Maxx Crosby's not forever, right? And Malcolm Kuntz is on a 1-year deal. Is he going to be around longer than that? You know what I mean? So as we talked about before, like, John Spytek's job is not only to prepare the team for this year, but also for the future as well. So I think who was it? Oh, it was the Ravens. Matter of fact, it's funny we bring up the Ravens. They drafted Terrell Suggs in the first round when Daniel Jeremiah was a scout there, and he said we didn't need his position at all. We had plenty of guys at that position, but he was the best player available on our board. We took him, and he ended up winning Defensive Rookie of the Year. Right? Okay, injury happened, and he ended up becoming that guy. So I don't think that you'd be wrong if you decide to go in that direction in round 2. I just know that the majority of people are going to be like, well, you could have got a wide receiver, or you could have, they're going to a 3-4. You could have got this guy. Everyone starts to think about need. And I'm guilty of it too, right? I don't want to be excluded from that. I'm guilty of it too. That's why in my head, I'm like, okay, should they do this? Should they do that? Like, look, man, when you start arguing with yourself, it's a problem. Right? So, especially if you lose the argument. So I haven't lost any argument myself, so I'm good there. But the minute I start arguing myself and I lose, all right, now we got issues. So, I mean, it's just a debate that I have back and forth in my head, like, what would make most sense at that position. And obviously, until we know how round 1 is playing out or is played out, it's really going to be hard to actually put your finger on and say, yeah, this is exactly what they need to do.
Yeah, and I agree with you and Amber. You guys were both saying like draft for the best player available, and I always go back to like, and I'm making like an NBA example again when the Pistons had the #1 overall pick and they went with Darko instead of Carmelo, and it's like, why did you do that? He was the best player available. You know, and going back, there's this one guy. He's also a defensive tackle as well. That's really impressive. I think he actually has a little bit more upside than someone like Lee Hunter, Grayson Halton from Oklahoma. He can stop the rush. He can, you know, he can stop the run.
Research. Well, you've been on it.
So week two, Q. And he has like less pure power than a guy like Lee Hunter, but he has more upside. And so if you look at round 2, like he's another option as well if you bank on upside and potential. But I think everyone's thinking Lee Hunter at this point. But like I said, if you can get Zion, and he would be a steal at 36 in my opinion. Q, let's talk about round 3. Because this is, you know, because you can go either way.
Round 2, how are we gonna figure out round 3?
Hey, listen, I'm saying we go defensive tackle at round 2. Okay, look, I'm saying build the trenches. Because here's the thing, my favorite wide receiver is Jordan Tyson in the draft. He's my favorite wide, and he's gonna go early, right?
Mel I just asked Mel about him. That's a really good pull. He said he's wide receiver 1 if healthy. Right. But that's been the problem. He's been so banged up in his career. Right. I mean, but the dude could do everything. You're not wrong. I mean, he could do everything from punt return, kick return, and be wide receiver 1. He's got all the skill set, but, you know, torn ACL, shoulder injury, hamstring. When he went down at Arizona State, that's when it became the Cam Scatterboo show. You know what I mean? Like he was already a really good player, but literally all they could do is lean on Cam because Jordan wasn't there. If that dude could stay healthy, I think what the hamstring is what's been nagging him lately. If he could stay healthy, he's a great player. I just hate using that asterisk if he could stay healthy, right? Because I mean, it's just one of those things. If I have to use that saying, then that means that he hasn't been healthy more times than not, and so that's a big issue. But you're right that he's going to go early. He's probably going to be a first-round pick, and someone's going to take a chance because he can be everything when healthy.
Yeah, and so that's the thing, like when you talk about health, but you're banking on potential in a draft. Like that's all it really is. You can draft somebody that everyone's hyping up and he turns out to not be that dude. So for me, it's like I don't think the Raiders are going to get their wide receiver because they're going to get taken. Another wide receiver I like is Denzel Boston, because obviously I'm, you know, West Coast kid, close to Washington. So I absolutely love him. And I think Link would like that too because it's ties to the Huskies. But I don't think he might be there either. So
he well, not around 3. He could be a round 2 guy that maybe you're looking at.
But then it's like I might as well go for Lee Hunter, right? Because if you just think about if he's there, so it's like okay, let's just say we go defense for round 2, right? Let's just have some fun here.
Okay.
For round 3, Q, where are you looking for round 3? Because there's so many holes. Like, are you going offense?
I'm going, I'm you know, DB by nature, right? So I always look at corners. I always think that you need to go get a corner. It's a pretty deep draft for corners. So that I would start to look at the corners in that. I also, if available, and I don't know if he's going to be available, and this is, you know, a little bit of, I know the kid, I know he could play. It's a little bit of nostalgia for the Raiders. If Zachariah Branch is there, I almost have to take him.
Yeah.
I feel like I almost have to take him. Right. I mean, I can't, in good faith, I couldn't sit there and watch the great nephew of Cliff Branch just go to someone else if I had the chance to get him, especially if he's there like in round 3. And there's a chance that he might be. He can punt return. He can kick return. He's dynamic as all get out. I mean, the dude is a playmaker. He showed his speed at the combine. He's small. That's the one thing. That's the knock on him. He's small. He's light in the tail, but he could play. And so it would be hard for me. And maybe this is why I'm not a GM for many reasons. It would be hard for me to pass him up just for the nostalgia and the fact that speed is speed, and we know he's got it just like his great uncle Cliff did.
And Al Davis loves speed. So and just to see the name Brand
that was
back
Mark
on the jersey.
Best friend, by the way. Cliff was Mark Davis's best friend. So I could MD's not going to get in the way. MD's not going to force a pick, but I could see MD saying, "Hey, John, I ain't mad at you if you take Zachariah Branch. Not mad at that at all." And I know, like Amber told the story the other day, him and Malachi both did not want to go to Chargers camp. They both wanted to go to Raiders camp. You know, when they had the opportunity, when as her students they were at USC, and she took them to one of the camps, and that's when I met both those guys. And Zachariah is a great young man, and I would love to see him in the silver and black.
Yeah, and he's got those silver and black ties, but I'm with you because I think the secondary is an issue, Q. And this is something that the Raiders have been trying to address, but at the same time, they haven't fully addressed it. And there's holes in the secondary. And I think they think if they go with a 3-4 base and they have these quick linebackers, then that's going to make you don't have to put too much into the secondary. Like, you have to have some good pieces. But if you have that quick linebacker group, and you're going to pretty much be rushing these quarterbacks, that's going to cause the secondary to not have too much pressure on them. But one guy that I really, really like, and I've mentioned him before, I believe, and that's Colton Hood from Tennessee. He's a little bit smaller, like he's 6 foot, but he tackles really well. He's extremely physical. The only thing is that when he's not putting in that effort into tackling, he misses tackles. And so that would be the only knock on him. The other guy that I really like is AJ Halsey from LSU. Okay. This guy's an absolute stud. If you go look at his tape on YouTube, like, he hits really well. He's a big guy. I think he's like 6'4", and he plays a lot of zone. So that's why I like him. And sometimes I think I heard from Mel Kiper one time, you kind of want to draft a guy that plays a similar style to what he might play in the NFL. So he's not going to have, that learning experience where he's trying to adjust to the system that they're playing. But I think we both agree. Like, what are your thoughts on the secondary that the Raiders have right now?
I like him on the surface, but I definitely think that they need to bring in some other guys, right? I mean, I like Eric Stokes a lot. I'm glad he got that contract extension. I think he earned it. We'll see what Taron Johnson could do if he could stay healthy again. I hate that again, but if he can, he could be that nickel and allow Jeremy Chinn not to have to step up and slide into that big nickel role. Darian Porter, I think he has a lot of upside. He's still learning. I honestly think we're going to see a lot more man-to-man coverage this year from the Raiders, just with them being in that 3-4. A lot of times you like to have those corners up there bumping and running at the line of scrimmage. So I think that you're going to see a lot of that. Darian Porter still needs to get used to that. He played a lot of zone when he was at Iowa State. And remember, he was a wide receiver originally, and he had to switch over to being a corner. So he's still learning that position. So Darian Porter's, at some point, hopefully going to, be a really good player that they can lean on. He's a young dude, so that's something good. But I would have no problem with them going and getting a corner or two, in this draft. And again, the draft is pretty deep. I like D'Angelo Pons a lot from Indiana. I'm not sure where he's going to go. I know he's a little bit smaller, and everyone thinks he only could play the nickel position. I don't. He's a guy that I believe could play on the outside or in the inside. He has a lot of Meek Robertson in him. I think he has a little bit, maybe even better ball skills than Amik, and Amik was dynamic in college. So, and I liked Amik a lot. And it's funny, I liked him a lot, but every year I was like, well, I don't know if he's going to make the team. I questioned him every year, and I told him that in the locker room. I was like, dude, this is no disrespect, but every year when you start, counting down to who's going to make the 53 and who's not, I always looked at it. I was like, man, is this the year that Amik's going to take off, or is he not going to make the roster? And so I told him, we had a good laugh about it in the locker room. I was like, I'm not trying to slight you at all. I never know. And he's like, man, I'm just going to ball out. You know how he always talked. And he always sounded like he was going to say something funny. And when he didn't say something funny, such a good dude. So it was cool to be able to share, that laugh. And he's like, man, you ain't the only one. A lot of people said that. He's like, you're just the only one that's got the stones to tell me. And I was like, no, I mean, like, it's, it is what it is. Nothing to be ashamed of. It's just he's always been that kind of underdog guy, like the guy that most people say, I don't know if he can do this, that, and the other. And he always proves what he can. He's got that dog in him. And I think Pons has that dog in him, too.
Pons might be available in the 3rd round. And I actually love that pick, Q, because you're right. Very similar to Amik Robertson, which is like a great comparison, but Pons might be there in the 3rd round. But Raider Nation, let us know who you think the Raiders should draft in round 2 or round 3. If you think they should go get a playmaker. Everyone's talking about they need a wide receiver number 1. Will they get it in the draft? We'll find out. We'll have some more fun, obviously, before the draft, doing these mocks and whatnot. But coming up on the other side, questions and comments with Q. So we'll get to that on the other side. Keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're watching or listening to the Raider Squad Show. And a quick word from our sponsors. Welcome to the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft with 18 flavors to choose from, including new options like Confetti Craze, Fruity Rainbow, or Cotton Candy. There's something for everyone. The board is set. The flavors are ready. And I've got my number 1 pick for 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. So for me, like, I'm just a grape girl. I like anything grape. So if you got grape there, and I believe 5-Hour Energy has actually a really dope grape flavor, I would be drafting grape number 1 overall. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm drafting grape every time, but I also like that Confetti Craze flavor as well. And the thing about 5-Hour Energy that I actually like is that there's 0 sugar. And so you're also not going to have that midday crash as well. So find your new flavor of 5-Hour Energy shots, available online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. Welcome back, Raider Nation. Remember, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media channels. We got a couple of minutes here for questions and comments, and this is pretty much an easy one. Okay, Q, if you had to pick, and this is from Dave S226, so I guess 2026. Dave says, Cousins or Flacco for the bridge quarterback?
I mean, neither one are great, but, you know, I've said Kirk Cousins. I don't know what he is, though, and I don't know what he thinks he is. Right? Like if they don't address the bridge quarterback position pretty soon, I'm assuming that that's what direction they're going to go. Kirk Cousins. I think they're allowing him to see if there's any market for him. Maybe Pittsburgh is a market for him. Maybe Arizona's a market for him. I know they got Minshew, but what does that mean? You know, I don't know. You know, yeah. So exactly. So if he's out there and available, it won't cost very much money. He's getting paid by the Falcons. If he thinks that he's going to get paid really well, then I'm out on that, because it would be a vet minimum at the most. So if he decides that he needs to get paid really well, I'm out. If it's Flacco, so be it. I mean, it's neither one of us is going to get anyone excited, and I think everyone understands what it is. At some stage of the game, you know, they'll pass the sticks on to Fernando Mendoza, and that's what everyone wants to see anyway. So I would go with Kirk Cousins. I'm not a Flacco guy. And oh, by the way, for anyone who's like, oh, he'll be a perfect mentor, he literally just said last year he's not there to be a mentor. So he's not going to do that this year either. Tigers don't change their stripes. He's not going to like get a year older and be like, you know what? I think I'll be a mentor this year. No, he's not. That's not who he is. He doesn't want to be that guy. So that's not a reason to get him either.
Yeah, and I honestly wouldn't want all of the distractions for a guy like Fernando Mendoza, because like if Kirk Cousins is going to be in there trying to be the number one guy, then it's like, when do they bring in Fernando Mendoza? And then all that drama, and then we're like in another soap opera. Exactly. Let's go to Warlock 67. Question: Seattle only has 4 picks in this draft. Should we try and trade for their first round pick and get another stud? That's really interesting. Would you try to make some moves with Seattle, knowing they only have 4 picks in the draft?
Well, if they only have 4, I don't know why they'd want to give up their first round pick, unless I mean,
I don't know how that. Yeah.
No, I mean, I understand what they're saying, because they'd pick up a couple more picks, but I would think that they'd want their first, but then their first is number 32.
Which is technically a second round pick.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. Yeah, I guess I can see the rationale behind that. Kind of do what the Ravens did when they traded up and got Lamar Jackson at the back end of round 1, got that 5th-year option. I mean, if a player is starting to drop, or a player drops, and all of a sudden it looks like he's going to be a day 2 guy, and that's the guy that you really, really want, I can see them making a move like that. But I think in this draft, to be honest, I think Spytek will have I think there'll be a bigger chance that he moves back as opposed to moving forward. But that's just me.
I'm not going to lie. When we do like a mock draft, a legit mock draft, which we'll try to do this season before the draft, I'm going to like start trading picks and stuff, just because I'd be like, this what happened in real life. You got to make it like realistic. You know what I mean? Okay, let's go to Raider Jmar. This is an interesting one. Raider Nation, Q. Should we get excited about this season or be cautious? Seems like every year is the same. High hopes equals big disappointments. Will this season be different?
I'm excited for the season already, and it's not because of the win-loss total that I think that the Raiders are going to have. It's because I think that they're going to have a chance to start the building process, right? I feel like that they've fully embraced the fact that this is a rebuild, right? And they brought in some really good players, and to start to see what Clint Kubiak as a head coach can do. And I don't think that there's pressure on him to have to be some great turnaround project year 1. To see that the Raiders have a franchise quarterback in Fernando Mendoza, you know, when they finally make that happen, I think that's something to get excited about as well. And just understand that this year is not your year, right? This year is not going to be a year. You're not going to be the Patriots where you turn it around in 1 year and go to the Super Bowl. Like I don't see that happening. Could it happen? Sure, but I don't see something like that. I just see a chance to let this team start to build. It's a very tough division that you're playing in, so you're going to take some bumps and bruises, but you can start to see progress. And if you see progress by the end of the season, what I don't know what that means as far as win-loss total. I really don't want to give one this year. I know that at some point we'll have to, but I just think that if you're seeing the building process, that's something you should get excited about, because it seems like for the first time in a very, very long time, the Raiders are trying to build this thing the right way.
Yeah, Raider Nation, I'm not going to lie. I'm the wrong person to ask. I'm excited every offseason. Q, I know you had that conference call with Mel Kiper. What should we look forward to on the next episode of Locked on Raiders?
I got his answers to my questions, and I got greedy and I got in there and asked him about 3 or 4 questions because that's what I do. But Mel's great. So yeah, he'll give the answers to what I asked about protection or playmakers in round 2. I asked a couple questions. I asked about Malachi Fields and Jordan Tyson, 2 wide receivers. Fields, I'll just tell you, he called him a power forward. Right, he's not the fastest dude, but he's a dude that he can make all the plays for you. And then I also asked about the defensive tackle, nose tackle room, how deep it is, and he rattled off a bunch of different names. So yeah, all that's coming up and then some.
All right, Raider Nation. So make sure to keep it locked here on the Locked On Network, also for Locked On Raiders, so you can hear all that good stuff from Mel Kiper on the next episode. We'll be back on Monday. Big Link will be back as well. So stay excited, Raider Nation. We'll be back on Monday. Enjoy the weekend.